Chapter 1. The miserable end and miraculous rebirth of Alex Miller in the annals of human history, where epic tales of valor and conquest are etched in gold. There exists a footnote so pitiful, so drenched in the sweat of failure, that it could make a bard weep and a jester retire in shame. This footnote was Alex Miller, a 27-year-old paragon of loserdom, a man whose life was a masterclass in squandered potential. Alex was not merely a geek. He was the patron saint of geeks, a high priest of procrastination who worshipped at the altar of MMORPGs, manga, and existential despair. His existence was a tragic opera performed in a key only dogs could hear, a symphony of regret played on a kazoo with a broken reed. Picture a squalid apartment in the forgotten corner of a decaying Rust Belt town, where hope went to die and Wi-Fi was the only thing keeping the residents alive. Alex's one-bedroom hovel was a shrine to his obsessions. Walls papered with posters of scantily clad anime waifus, their doe-eyed gazes judging him from their two-dimensional thrones. His desk was a post-apocalyptic wasteland of crumpled energy drink cans, fossilized pizza crusts, and a keyboard so encrusted with Dorito dust it could have been excavated by archaeologists. The air was thick with the miasma of unwashed socks and regret, and the only light came from the flickering glow of his ancient PC, a relic that wheezed like an asthmatic dragon. On the screen, World of Eternal Questing blazed in all its pixelated glory, where Alex's level 92 Dark Elf rogue, Shadowslayer 69, was locked in a Sisyphean grind for a legendary dagger that the game's RNG gods had deemed he'd never wield. Alex himself was a walking argument against intelligent design. His face was a pockmarked moonscape, scarred by acne and poor hygiene, framed by a mop of greasy hair that hadn't seen shampoo since dial-up was a thing. His body was a testament to a diet of instant ramen and despair. Pale, flabby, with arms so weak they trembled under the weight of a Naruto omnibus. His wardrobe was a rotation of stained hoodies and cargo shorts, each pair more threadbare than the last. A uniform that screamed, "I gave up before I started. Friends, non-existent." The closest he'd come was his guildmates, a ragtag crew of online strangers who tolerated him because he could tank a raid boss without screwing up too badly. Girlfriend? The word was a foreign concept, as alien as exercise or sunlight. His one attempt at romance, a clumsy DM to a girl on Discord who liked Attack on Titan, ended with her blocking him after he asked if she'd cosplay as Mikasa. Virgin? Alex was so virginal he made hermits look like Casanova. Why did Alex crave a new chance at life? Because his current one was a cosmic joke, and he was the punchline. Deep down, beneath the layers of self-loathing and Cheeto crumbs, Alex harbored a flicker of ambition. He'd grown up on stories of heroes Luke Skywalker, Naruto Uzumaki, Eren Yeager, men who rose from nothing to change the world. He wanted to be somebody, to leave a mark, to be loved, respected, or at least noticed. But every attempt to climb out of his rut had failed. Job applications went unanswered, gym memberships expired and used, and his one stab at writing a novel stalled at page 3 because he got distracted by a one-piece marathon. Alex wasn't lazy, not really. He was paralyzed by fear of failure, convinced the universe had rigged the game against him. A new life, a clean slate, was his only hope to prove he could be more than a footnote. On this particular night, as the clock crept toward 2:47 a.m., Alex's life was about to take a turn. Not a heroic one, but a plunge into the absurd so humiliating it could have starred in a Kafka novel. The catalyst was a gastrointestinal apocalypse, a bowel movement so cataclysmic it deserved its own disaster movie. It began with a gurgle, a warning shot fired by a dinner of expired Taco Bell chalupas, a liter of generic cola, and a questionable gas station burrito that had been sitting in his fridge since the last presidential election. Alex was mid-raid, his guild battling a dragon that spat acid and insults in equal measure, when the rumble in his gut escalated to DEFCON 1. "Guys, I got a dip," he typed, his fingers slipping on the greasy keys. "Emergency. Again?" snapped XX Dragonlord 420XX, the guild leader, whose patience was thinner than Alex's hairline. "Dude, you're gonna get us wiped. Sort your shit out." Literally. Alex didn't have time to argue. He lurched from his chair, his cargo shorts sagging like a defeated flag, and waddled to the bathroom with the urgency of a man fleeing a tsunami. The bathroom was a war zone, a testament to neglect. The toilet was a throne of stains, the sink a petri dish of mold, and the mirror so grimy it reflected only shame. Alex dropped onto the seat, the cold porcelain a cruel contrast to the inferno brewing inside him. What followed was a battle for the ages, a clash between man and colon that would have made the gods of Olympus avert their eyes. He gripped the toilet seat like a ship's helm in a storm, his face twisted in a grimace of pure, primal suffering, as his body unleashed a torrent so violent it could have powered a small city. "Fuck you, Taco Bell," he roared, sweat pouring down his face. "Fuck you and your $2 chalupas. I'm never eating again." Midway through this scatological saga, a new sensation stabbed through his chest. A sharp, searing pain, like someone had driven a railroad spike through his sternum. His vision swam, his breath caught, and a cold sweat drenched his body. "Oh shit," he gasped, clutching his chest. "Is this a fucking heart attack? I'm 27. I can't die like this. Not on the goddamn toilet." Panic set in as his limbs grew heavy, his heart pounding like a death metal drummer on meth. He tried to stand, but his legs betrayed him, and he slid off the toilet with the grace of a drunk hippo. He hit the floor hard, landing in a vile puddle of his own piss and shit, the stench so potent it could have knocked out a landfill worker. As he lay there, writhing in agony, his life flashed before his eyes. A montage of failure so bleak it could have been directed by Lars von Trier. He saw himself at 10, mocked for his buck teeth and hand-me-down clothes. At 15, rejected by his crush because he smelled like instant noodles. At 22, fired from his only job at a comic shop for reading Bleach instead of stocking shelves. Every moment was a reminder of his insignificance, a litany of what-ifs that had never panned out. "Why?" he sobbed, his voice a broken whimper. "Why was my life such a fucking train wreck? I never got a chance. No friends, no love, no nothing. I just wanted to be somebody. The universe fucked me over. And now I'm dying in my own shit. This is bullshit." As the darkness closed in, Alex's final thought was a mix of defiance and despair. "I could have been great, if I just had a shot." And then, with a gurgling wheeze, he was gone. But the universe, it seems, is a prankster with a penchant for second chances. Death was not the end for Alex Miller. No, it was the opening act of a story so wild, so absurdly epic, it could have been ripped from the pages of a shonen manga. When Alex opened his eyes, he was no longer sprawled in a pool of his own filth. The reek of his bathroom had vanished, replaced by the crisp, loamy scent of a forest in bloom. He was lying on a bed of soft moss, surrounded by towering trees whose leaves shimmered with an otherworldly glow. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled patterns on the ground, and the air was alive with the chirps of unseen birds and the distant roar of something decidedly not friendly. This was no Earth. This was a world of magic, a medieval fantasy realm straight out of World of Eternal Questing, complete with the faint hum of arcane energy that made his skin tingle. "What in the actual fuck?" Alex muttered, sitting up. His voice stopped him cold. It wasn't the nasally whine he'd known his whole life. It was deep, commanding, the kind of voice that could rally an army or seduce a tavern wench. He looked down at his hands, expecting his usual pale, knobby fingers. Instead, he saw strong, tanned hands, calloused from swordplay or some equally badass pursuit. His arms were corded with muscle, his chest broad and defined, and, Holy Mother of God, was that an eight-pack? He scrambled to his feet, nearly tripping over a pair of polished leather boots that definitely weren't his. He was dressed in a fitted tunic of dark green, embroidered with silver thread, and trousers that hugged his sculpted legs like they were tailored by a deity. His hair, once a greasy disaster, was now a flowing mane of golden blonde, cascading past his shoulders like a shampoo commercial. He caught his reflection in a nearby stream and nearly fainted. Staring back was a face that could have graced the cover of a romance novel. High cheekbones, a chiseled jaw, and piercing blue eyes that sparkled with a mix of confusion and raw, untapped potential. He was, in a word, a goddamn Adonis. "Okay, either I'm in a coma or I've been ice-guyed," he said, running a hand through his luxurious locks. This is some zero shit right here. But as he marveled at his new body, a wave of foreign memories crashed into his mind, like a game patch downloading directly into his brain. He wasn't Alex Miller anymore. He was Varion es Falconia, 19-year-old son of Duke Alaric es Falconia, a minor noble ruling a crumbling duchy on the edge of the kingdom of Ticaris. The duchy was a speck on the map, a poor, windswept territory plagued by bandit raids and barren fields, one bad season away from collapse. Varion was the heir, trained in basic swordplay, archery, and horsemanship, but his life had been far from charmed. The memories revealed a darker truth. The original Varion had been moments from death when Alex arrived. Not from battle or disease, but by his own hand. A rope hung from a nearby tree, its noose swaying in the breeze, a silent testament to Varion's despair. Why had he chosen to end it all? The memories painted a grim picture. Varion was a sensitive soul, raised in a household where his father's expectations were as heavy as the duchy's debts. Duke Alaric, a stern, battle-scarred man, demanded a son who could restore the family's honor, a warrior to rival the knights of Ticaris' capital. But Varion, though skilled, was no prodigy. His swordplay was competent but uninspired, his magic aptitude barely above average. He was mocked by his peers, sons of wealthier nobles who called him the Falconia farm boy and sneered at his threadbare tunics. Worse, Varion had fallen in love with a girl, Elara, a merchant's daughter with eyes like starlight and a laugh that made his heart soar. For a year, they'd met in secret, dreaming of a future where they could escape the duchy's burdens. But Elara's father, eager for status, betrothed her to a cruel viscount's son, a brute who saw her as a trophy. Varion, powerless to stop the arrangement, begged her to run away with him. She refused, unwilling to abandon her family, and their final meeting ended in tears and bitter words. Heartbroken, humiliated by his peers, and crushed under his father's expectations, Varion saw no way out. The rope was his escape, a final act of defiance against a world that had rejected him. Alex, now Varion, staggered under the weight of these memories. "Jesus, kid," he muttered, staring at the noose. "You had it rough. But you know what? I'm not you. I'm Alex fucking Miller, and I've been given a shot to do this right. No more screwing around." He tore the rope from the tree, his new muscles rippling with purpose. This world was his chance to be the hero he'd always dreamed of. He'd grind like he did in World of Eternal Questing, mastering magic, martial arts, and swordplay. He'd get rich, powerful, and hell yeah, build a harem of busty elf babes with curves that could start a war. But he'd do it his way, fair and modest to the good folks, especially the elderly, but merciless to assholes and evildoers. Varion es Falconia was going to be a legend, or he'd die trying. Again, as he took his first step into the forest, he tripped over a root and face planted into the moss. "Son of a bitch!" he yelped, spitting out dirt. Some things, it seemed, didn't change. But as he picked himself up, a grin spread across his face. Chapter 2. The weight of Falconia. Varion trudged through the muck of Falconia, his boots sinking into mud that clung like a curse. The village sprawled before him, a sad patchwork of broken huts, sagging roofs, and hollow-eyed villagers who stared as if he were a traveling jester instead of their new lord. This place makes a post-apocalyptic wasteland look like a five-star resort, he thought, wiping sweat from his brow. The air stank of damp rot and despair, and he couldn't tell if it was the fields or the people decaying faster. From the edge of a crooked porch, an old widow watched him, her lips pursed tight as a miser's coin purse. Another fancy lord with a silver tongue, she thought bitterly. Last one took our grain and left us to rot. This boy's no different, just younger and dumber. She spat into the dirt and turned away, her shawl fluttering like a tattered flag of surrender. Varion squared his shoulders and marched toward the village square, if you could call a muddy patch with a splintered well a square. A handful of villagers lingered there, their faces etched with suspicion. He cleared his throat, aiming for gravitas but landing somewhere closer to awkward. "Look, I know this place is a mess," he began, gesturing at the crumbling huts. "But I've got a plan." We build a mill, grind our own grain, stop bleeding coins to those crooked merchants downriver. Winter's coming, and we're not starving through it. Who's with me? Silence. Then a wiry farmer with a face like weathered bark snorted. A mill? With what, lad? Your shiny dreams. A ripple of jeers spread through the crowd, and half of them drifted off, muttering about wasted time. Varion's cheeks burned. Great, I'm trying to save their asses, and they're giving me the NPC treatment. Time to level up my charisma stat. A woman stepped forward, her dark hair streaked with gray, her eyes sharp despite the exhaustion lining her face. Mira, he'd heard her called. A widow who'd buried 2 sons and still kept her small plot alive. A mill's a fine idea, she said, voice low but steady. But ideas don't fill bellies. You got stone? Timber? Trust. She crossed her arms, waiting. Varion opened his mouth, then shut it. Myra's words stung like a slap. Ideas don't fill bellies. She had a point. Damn it, she did. He shifted his weight, boots sinking into the village square's muddy slop, and met her hard gaze. I'll get what we need, he said finally, voice low but firm. Just give me a chance. Mira studied him, her eyes narrowing as if weighing a spoiled haunch of meat. Then she nodded once. Barely a flicker of hope, more like a crumb tossed to a stray dog, but it was something. Varion clung to it, a lifeline in this rotting mess of a world. He didn't have time to savor it, though. The villagers drifted away, their murmurs a dull buzz of doubt, and he turned toward the castle that loomed ahead. A crumbling heap of stone perched on a low hill, its towers jagged against the gray sky like broken teeth. One good storm and half of it might collapse into the mud. Varion sighed, his breath fogging in the chill, and started walking. No teleporting here, this wasn't some speed run. He needed time to think, to let the gears grind in his head. The path was a slog, a ribbon of churned earth winding past sagging huts and barren fields. His boots squelched with every step, the mud cold and clingy, tugging at him like the village's despair. A sharp wind cut through his threadbare cloak, carrying the faint stench of rot. Maybe a dead rat, maybe the last of the harvest gone sour. He passed a cluster of kids kicking a deflated pig bladder around, their laughter thin and brittle, like glass about to shatter. A woman hauled a bucket from a well, her arms trembling under the weight, and glared at him as silt-brown water sloshed over the rim. Yeah, I get it, he thought. I'm the Lord's kid who's done jack shit for you. Back on Earth, I'd be screaming at the screen, "Fix this, you idiot!" As Alex Miller, he'd been a nobody, jobless, awkward, the guy who'd rather grind XP in a game than face a grocery clerk. But here, as Varion es Falconia, he had a shot. A real one. This place is a total shitshow, but maybe I can Tony Stark my way out of it. Step 1. Don't suck. The castle grew closer, its gates yawning open, iron hinges rusted to a dull red. He crossed the threshold, boots echoing on cracked stone, and the air shifted damp, heavy, laced with mildew. Memories hit him like a double-tap combo, Varion's and Alex's tangling together. As a kid, he darted through these halls, ducking tutors and sneaking candied figs from the kitchens. He could still feel the thrill of finding that secret passage behind the library, a narrow tunnel, dusty and spiderwebbed, that spit him out near the pantry. Alex would have lost his mind over this, he thought, a grin tugging at his lips. Perfect for a D&D campaign, rogue sneaking the horde, bard distracting the guards. Wait, the passage. It was real, not some campaign map. Could he still fit? Might come in handy. The great hall stretched before him, a cavern of neglect. Tattered banners dangled from the rafters, their falcon crests faded to smudges. His father, Alaric, Lord of Falconia, or what was left of it, sprawled across a warped wooden chair, a dented goblet clutched in his meaty fist. The stench of sour wine hit Varion like a punch, sharp and rancid, before the man's voice even growled. So, the whelp's back, Alaric slurred, his bloodshot eyes narrowing to slits. Come to play, Lord, have you? You're as useless as your mother was soft. He lurched to his feet, swaying like a tree in a gale, and Varion tensed. I'm here to fix this place, Varion said, keeping his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. The village is dying. We need... Fix it. Alaric's laugh was a wet, barking thing, spittle flecking his gray-streaked beard. You can't fix shit, boy. You'll scamper back to your books and your weak little dreams. He stumbled forward, and before Varion could twist away, a fist crashed into his jaw. Pain exploded, hot and bright, blood flooding his mouth. A split lip, maybe a loose tooth. He staggered, catching himself on a table's edge. Alaric's hand shook as he pulled back, his voice dropping to a mutter. She thought she could fix me too. For a heartbeat, something raw flickered in his eyes. Grief, maybe. Before the sneer locked back into place. Get out of my sight. Varion spat blood onto the floor, anger sizzling under the ache. Darth Vader wishes he had this guy's vibe. But I'm not here to play redemption arc. I'm here to win. He straightened, turned, and stalked out, Alaric's drunken cackle echoing behind him in the corridor. A figure slipped from the shadows, a wiry man with a hawkish nose and eyes sharp as flint. Festin, the head butler, his faded uniform crisp despite the castle's rot. Master Varion, he said, voice dry as old parchment. I see the Duke's in rare form today. Varion wiped his mouth, wincing. Yeah, a real ray of sunshine. Got a spare bottle of whatever he's drowning in? I could use a shot. Festin's lips twitched, almost a smile. I'd advise against it, my lord. His vintage is an acquired taste. Perhaps a cloth instead. He pulled a handkerchief from his sleeve with a flourish, offering it like a stage magician. Varion took it, pressing it to his lip. Thanks. Hey, Festin, about the strongbox. Where's he keep the key these days? The butler's eyes narrowed, but a glint of mischief danced there. The Duke's chambers, usually, though I suspect you recall a certain loose brick by the fireplace. Given your adventurous youth. Varion grinned, then winced again. Caught me. Think you could keep him busy? I need to borrow a few silvers. For the village. Festin arched a brow. Borrow, you say? Well, the Duke could use a rest. I'll see to it. He glided off, silent as a ghost. That night, Varion slipped into Alaric's study, heart hammering like a blacksmith's forge. The strongbox hunkered under a stack of moldy ledgers, its iron lock glinting in the candlelight. He pried the loose brick free. Same spot, same gritty scrape, and fished out the key. The lock clicked open, revealing a meager pile of silvers, barely enough to jingle. We're screwed, he thought, stomach sinking. Still, he scooped up a handful, guilt prickling like nettles. For Myra's kids. For the village. I'll make it right. The next dawn, Varion rode to Greystone, a market town pulsing with life. The streets were a chaotic tangle of creaking carts, shouting hawkers, and the clatter of hooves on cobblestone. The air carried the sharp tang of fresh fish, the smoky bite of roasting chestnuts, and a faint undercurrent of manure. His tunic, patched but freshly scrubbed, clung to his frame, and his smile masked the nervous churn in his gut. Time to hustle some medieval venture capital, crypto-style. He'd prepared for this con the night before, slipping out under moonlight to a grimy roadside trader a mile from Falconia. The man, all bones and shifty eyes, had a cart stacked with sacks of charcoal, black, gritty lumps that smelled of burnt pine. Varion tossed him a handful of stolen silvers, Alaric's strongbox lighter for it, and slung a heavy sack over his horse. No mills, no kills, no nothing yet, he thought, smirking as he rode back. But these suckers won't know this isn't ours. It's like shilling a shitcoin before the blockchain's even coded in Greystone. He ducked into the Drunken Ox, a tavern thick with the haze of pipe smoke and the sour reek of spilled ale. The floorboards creaked under his boots, sticky with God's knew what, and the low hum of voices dipped as eyes flicked his way. At a scarred oak table in the corner, 3 merchants nursed their drinks. Merrick, bald as an egg and sour-faced, glowered like he'd bitten a lemon. Voss, lean and twitchy, chewed a reed with the focus of a man defusing a bomb. Kalen, young and lanky with a mop of chestnut curls, had a grin that screamed trouble. The good kind Varion dropped the charcoal sack with a deliberate thud, letting a few lumps tumble across the table. "Gentlemen," he said, spreading his arms like a showman. His voice smooth despite the sweat prickling his neck. "Falconia's about to flip the script. Picture this: watermills that grind grain for bread, saw logs into planks, and turn scrub pines into charcoal, all at once. A triple-threat cash machine. I need investors with balls and brains. Buy trade bonds now, exclusive, limited stakes, and you're first in line for profits that'll make your coffers weep." Marek's lip curled, his voice like gravel. "Falconia? That mudhole's one bad harvest from a graveyard. You're peddling dreams, boy." Varion didn't flinch. "Dreams? Nah, this is a done deal." He nudged the charcoal sack, his grin sharp. "This is just a taste. Our forests are a gold mine, untapped. I've got nobles in Takeris' capital begging for a piece, but I'm giving you the ground floor. 500 silvers per bond, and you're locked in for tenfold returns. Wait too long, and Varnell's fat cats will snatch it." Voss spat his reed onto the table, eyes narrowing. "If it's so grand, why's your duchy broke?" Varion leaned in, voice dropping to a conspiratorial purr, channeling every crypto bro he'd seen on YouTube. "Because we've been sleeping on it, Voss. These mills? Revolutionary. Ancient tech from distant lands, let's say. Grain keeps us fed, planks build ships, charcoal fuels every forge in Takeris. You're not buying a product, you're buying a future. But this offer's got a timer. I'm writing to Varnell next, and their coin's already pledged." Kalen, quiet till now, picked up a charcoal lump and held it to a nearby candle. It caught fast, burning hot and steady, the flame casting shadows across his sharp cheekbones. He whistled low. "Well, damn, that's not half bad." His eyes flicked to Varion, glinting with something. Amusement, maybe, or suspicion. Marek grumbled. Voss haggled over terms, but they signed, their seals pressed into parchment, lured by the charcoal's proof and Varion's silver tongue. 500 silvers changed hands, a fortune for Falconia's empty coffers. As the others shuffled off to settle their tab, Kalen lingered, motioning Varion to a quieter corner by the tavern's hearth. The fire crackled, throwing warmth across their faces. "Nice pitch," Kalen said, his voice low, that grin still playing on his lips. "But let's cut the bullshit. This charcoal is not yours. Smells like old man Torvstock buys it cheap from the border kills. You don't have mills yet, do you?" Varion's stomach lurched, but he kept his face steady, forcing a chuckle. "Busted. This guy's sharper than a +5 dagger." "You got me," he admitted, raising his hands. "No mills yet, but the plan's real. Forests, rivers, labor, we've got it all. I just needed a spark to get the fire going." Kalen laughed, a bright, reckless sound that cut through the tavern's din. "You're a ballsy bastard. I'll give you that. Most lords would have taxed us into the dirt or waved a sword around. You're spinning a story, but it's a good one. I'm in, not just for the coin, but because I want to see what a crazy son of a bitch like you does next." Varion blinked, then grinned, genuine this time. "Deal. Stick with me, Kalen, and we'll make waves bigger than a dragon's splash zone." They clasped hands, the kind of grip that sealed more than a contract. Over a round of watered-down ale and a quick dice game, Kalen cheated, Varion called him on it, they swapped stories. Kalen, it turned out, was a merchant's third son, clawing his way up from nothing, with a knack for spotting bets worth taking. "You're not like other nobles," he said, tossing a die. "They're all pomp and no spine. You've got vision. Vision and a vendetta against starving." Varion shot back, pocketing a silver Kalen owed him. "This guy's cool. Like Han Solo but with better hair." With the merchant's coin weighing down his saddlebags, Varion returned to Falconia 2 days later, a hired cart groaning behind him. Timber beams, quarried stone, iron nails, and a stack of tools rattled in the load, bought from Greystone's markets, along with 3 grizzled masons and a carpenter with a limp but steady hands. The village square was a churned-up swamp when he arrived, the air heavy with the stench of damp earth and rotting straw. Villagers milled about, gaunt men in patched tunics, women with cracked hands, kids with ribs sharp under their rags. Their eyes followed him, hard and wary. Like he was a wolf circling their flock, he climbed onto the cart, heart thumping. Speech time. Sell it, Varion, make them believe. Like hyping a Kickstarter but with actual stakes. He raised his hands, the crowd's murmurs fading to a tense hush. People of Falconia, he called, voice carrying over the square, rough but clear. You've been through hell, lords who promised the stars and left you with mud. I know you don't trust me. Why should you? I'm young, untested, and this duchy's a wreck. But I'm not here to take. I'm here to build. A watermill powered by the river, grinding grain for bread, sawing logs for trade, burning scraps into charcoal for coin. Your coin. Work with me and I'll pay you half a silver now, half when it's done. For every tree you haul, I'll toss an extra. We're not just surviving, we're rising. A ripple ran through the crowd, half doubt, half hunger. A wiry man, Tomas, stepped forward, his face carved with suspicion. Coin now? Or is this another lord's lie? Varion tossed him a small sack. It hit the mud with a heavy clink, silvers glinting as it split open. For the first crew, he said. Who's in? Hands shot up, hesitant at first, then eager, driven by the promise of coin in a world that offered none. Mira, the gray-streaked widow with eyes like flint, pushed through the crowd. I'll sort the workers, she said, her voice clipped but steady. But don't think this buys trust, Lord. Varion nodded, swallowing his relief. They're in for now. Step 1. Cleared. The next morning, the riverbank buzzed with labor, the air sharp with the scent of cut pine and damp clay. Villagers dragged logs from the nearby woods, chipped stone into blocks, and sank posts into the muddy bank, following Varion's plan. A hybrid of medieval water wheels and half-remembered YouTube clips about industrial revolutions. Thank you, random history nerds, he thought, sketching gear ratios in the dirt for the carpenter. He showed a mason how to angle the foundation for stability, his hands gesturing wildly as he explained torque like it was a spell. This shit's straight out of Civ 6, but it's gonna work. He worked alongside them, hauling timber until his shoulders screamed, his tunic soaked with sweat and streaked with mud. No half-assing this, he told himself, heaving a log into place. Alex would have quit by noon, whining about Wi-Fi. I'm Varion now and I'm all in. He darted between tasks, checking the wheel's alignment, tossing silvers to a kid who dragged in a scrawny pine, shouting encouragement to a woman wrestling a stone block. Every move was deliberate, every hour a grind. Midday, a rope frayed and snapped with a sharp twang. A heavy beam swung loose, plummeting toward Halden, a broad-shouldered villager with a limp, too slow to dodge as he stacked planks. Varion didn't think. He sprinted, slamming into Halden with his full weight, sending them both sprawling into the mud. The beam crashed inches away, splintering on impact, dirt spraying like shrapnel. Varion's chest heaved, his ribs aching from the tackle. Halden stared, wide-eyed, then gripped his arm. Oh, you won, Lord. Varion pulled him up, brushing off the pain with a grin. Need you alive to finish this thing. The crew paused, tools stilling. A few nodded, their faces softening. Impressed, maybe, by the Lord who'd risked his neck. But others, like Tomas, kept their eyes narrow, muttering to Mira. She folded her arms, her voice low. He's not lazy, I'll give him that. But one good deed don't make a savior. As dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, the mill skeleton stood tall. Beams braced, will half-built, foundation solid. Varion wiped sweat from his brow, his hands raw and blistered, and scanned the workers. They'd taken his coin, followed his orders, and seen him bleed for one of their own. Respect was creeping in, but trust? That was a tougher boss fight. Fair enough, he thought. They'll come around when the mill's spinning and their bellies are full. Chapter 3. The price of progress. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky above Falconia in hues of amber and rose. Along the riverbank, the mill stood as a testament to Varion's ambition, its water wheel creaking rhythmically as it churned the sluggish current. The air buzzed with activity. The sharp rasp of saws slicing through logs, the low rumble of grindstones pulverizing grain, and the occasional shout of workers coordinating their efforts. Inside the mill, the scent of fresh-cut timber mingled with the dusty tang of flour and the acrid bite of charcoal smoke. A gritty perfume of progress, Varion stood at the center of it all. His tunic damp with sweat, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms hardened by weeks of labor. He hefted a sack of flour onto a cart, muscles straining under the weight, then paused to wipe his brow with a calloused hand. His dark hair clung to his forehead, and his gray eyes surveyed the scene with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. This is it, he thought. The heartbeat of Falconia. Not a dream anymore, a reality. The mill wasn't just a structure. It was a lifeline, pulling the duchy back from the brink. Coin trickled in, tentative but real, and with it, the faint stirrings of hope that he stepped outside. The cool breeze off the river a welcome relief. The water glittered like molten gold in the fading light, and Varion allowed himself a small, crooked grin. If Alex Miller could see this, he'd lose his mind. But I'm not Alex anymore. I'm Varion, and this is just the beginning. Miles away, the castle loomed over Falconia like a brooding giant, its stone walls stained with neglect. The great hall was a mausoleum of faded glory, its air thick with the sour reek of spilled wine and unwashed wool. Alaric, Lord of Falconia, slouched in a high-backed chair, his once proud frame diminished by years of excess. His bloodshot eyes stared into the depths of a goblet, the wine within trembling as his hand shook. A shadow moved at the edge of his vision. Feston, the head butler, gliding in with his usual quiet precision. Feston, Alaric rasped, his voice rough as gravel. Where's the boy? Off playing lordling again, I wager. Feston's thin lips quirked, the barest hint of amusement. Master Varion is at the mill, my lord. It's quite the sight. The production is thriving. Perhaps you'd like to see it yourself. Thriving. Alaric's laugh was a harsh, barking sound that echoed off the stone walls. The whelps tinkering with toys while Falconia crumbles. He'll be our ruin yet. He tipped the goblet back, wine splashing down his grizzled chin. Speaking of ruin, the strongbox is light. What's he done now? Feston's expression remained a mask of calm. Master Varion took some coin to fund the mill, my lord. An investment, one might argue, given the returns. Investment. Alaric's face twisted, a storm brewing in his hazel eyes. He stole from me, from his own father. He lurched to his feet, the goblet clattering to the floor, wine pooling like blood on the stone. Where is he? I'll drag him back by his scrawny neck. Varion was stacking planks near the mill's entrance when a bellow shattered the afternoon's hum. Boy! Alaric's voice thundered across the riverbank, raw with fury. Varion's stomach plummeted. He turned to see his father charging toward him, cloak flapping like a tattered banner, face flushed with drink and rage. Feston followed at a discreet distance, his dark eyes flickering with something unreadable. Father, Varion's words were cut off as Alaric's fist slammed into his shoulder, sending him staggering back into a pile of timber. You think you can steal from me? Alaric roared, seizing Varion's collar with a meaty hand. You think you're clever, building your little machines while I rot? Varion's pulse hammered in his ears, but he forced himself to hold his father's gaze. I took the coin to save us, he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. The mill's working, trades picking up, coins coming in. Look around you. Lies. Alaric's breath was a hot, sour blast. You're a fool, just like your mother, soft-hearted and weak. He shoved Varion hard, wood splintering beneath him as he fell. You'll never be a lord. You're nothing. Anger flared in Varion's gut, burning away the fear. He pushed himself up, fists clenched. I'm more of a lord than you've been in a decade, he snapped. You'd rather drown in wine than lift a finger for Falconia. For a heartbeat, something flickered in Alaric's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or shame, but it drowned beneath a tide of rage. With a snarl, he snatched a half-empty wine bottle from a nearby crate and flung it. The glass spun through the air, catching the sunlight in a deadly arc. Varion twisted, but too late. The bottle struck his temple with a wet crunch, shattering into jagged shards. Pain seared through his skull, white-hot and blinding. He dropped to his knees, blood streaming down his face, staining the dirt crimson. "Get out," Alaric hissed, his voice quaking with barely contained violence. "Get out of my castle, you ungrateful cur. You're no son of mine." Varion struggled to his feet, the world tilting as blood dripped into his eye. He pressed a hand to the gash, feeling the slick warmth beneath his fingers. Around him, the villagers froze, their whispers a dull hum against the ringing in his ears. Without a word, he turned and limped away, each step a battle against the dizziness threatening to pull him under. Night cloaked Falconia in a shroud of stars, the air sharp with the promise of frost. Alaric sat alone in his chambers, the silence suffocating. His head pounded, the wine's fleeting comfort replaced by a gnawing emptiness. Feston's voice lingered in his mind. "The production is thriving." He'd scoffed, but the words clawed at him. Relentless, he rose, unsteady, and draped a threadbare cloak over his shoulders. The castle was a tomb as he slipped out, the cold biting at his exposed skin. He followed the river's soft murmur, boots crunching on frost-rimed grass, until the mill emerged from the darkness. It glowed with life, torchlight danced across the water wheel, and the rhythmic thud of labor echoed through the night. Villagers moved with purpose. A burly man hauled a sack of flour, a woman stacked planks, her breath puffing in the chill air. Alaric lingered in the shadows, unseen. A girl, no older than 10, dragged a log to the charcoal pile, her small face set with determination. A worker, his beard flecked with sawdust, clapped her shoulder and pressed a silver coin into her palm. She grinned, fierce and proud, tucking it into her ragged tunic. Alaric's chest tightened, a lump rising in his throat. They're alive. The mill wasn't just machinery. It was a pulse, breathing vitality into a land he'd let wither. He turned back toward the castle, the mill's light fading behind him. Tears pricked his eyes, hot against the cold. What have I done? The thought crashed over him, heavy and unyielding. I failed them all. Him most of all. He stumbled on, the weight of his mistakes a yoke he could no longer ignore. Varion stirred on a cot in a tent near the mill, the faint creak of the mill's wheel nudging him from sleep. His eyes fluttered open, and he winced as the dull ache in his muscles flared. Before he could fully orient himself, a familiar voice broke the silence. "Good morning, my lord," Feston, the butler, said, his tone a blend of formality and concern. He stood by the cot, holding a tray with a steaming cup of tea and a small loaf of bread. "I've brought you some tea and a bite to eat. You'll need your strength today." Varion blinked, focusing on Feston's lined face. "Feston? What are you doing here?" He pushed himself up, the cot creaking under his weight. "Taking care of you, as is my duty," Feston replied, setting the tray on a small table beside the cot. "You've been working yourself ragged, and after yesterday's incident, I thought it best to ensure you're properly tended to." He stepped closer, adjusting the blankets around Varion with a practiced hand. Varion rubbed his face, memories of the previous day's confrontation with his father flooding back. "Right? Thanks, Feston. I appreciate it." Feston nodded, his expression softening slightly. "Eat, my lord. The mill can wait a few moments." He hovered nearby, ensuring Varion had what he needed, then poured a bit of water from a pitcher into a basin. Offering a damp cloth for Varion to refresh himself, Varion reached for the cup, the warmth seeping into his hands. He took a sip, the tea's bitterness cutting through his grogginess. "How's the mill looking this morning?" "Running smoothly, as far as I can tell," Feston said, folding the cloth neatly after Varion used it. "The workers are already at it, but they'll manage without you for a bit. You need to rest." Varion chuckled, though it was tinged with exhaustion. "Rest? In this place? I'll rest when I'm dead, Feston." The butler's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Let's hope that's not for a long while, my lord." Varion finished the tea and tore into the bread. the simple meal grounding him. All right, enough pampering. Time to get back to work. Feston stepped aside, his duty fulfilled for the moment. As you wish, my lord, but do take care. Falconia needs you whole. Varion stood, stretching his sore limbs. I'll try. Thanks again, Feston. The butler bowed slightly and exited the tent, leaving Varion to gather his thoughts and prepare for the day ahead. Varion stumbled out of his tent, blinking like a mole against the morning sun slamming into his eyeballs. Kalen was already up, leaning against a tree with that casual, "I'm too cool for this" vibe, his sword sheathed at his side. "Morning, boss," he said, tossing a quick grin Varion's way. "Sleep well. Like a rock?" Varion muttered, stretching his arms until his joints popped. "A rock that got smashed by a warhammer. But yeah, sure." He scanned the area. The mill was humming along, workers were hauling stuff around, and the whole place screamed medieval fantasy simulator. Day 47. Still weird, still real, he thought, half expecting a loading screen to pop up. Kalen pushed off the tree, eyeing him. "You've got that look again. What's the plan, oh fearless leader?" Varion opened his mouth to spitball something vague, but then, bam! A wild encounter triggered. A figure glided toward them from the edge of the clearing, and Varion's brain blue-screened. She had silver hair shimmering like liquid moonlight, robes of green and gold embroidered with leaves that clung to her in all the right places. And holy shit, a fucking elf. His inner monologue went full geek mode. Wow, look at her. Damn, those milky boobs are straight out of a character creation menu. He blinked hard, forcing his eyes up to her face. Focus, dude. This isn't a fan service episode. She stopped a few feet away, her emerald eyes pinning him like a boss fight intro. "Lord Varion Falconia?" Her voice was smooth, almost too perfect, like the kind of VA work you'd hear in a AAA RPG cutscene. Yeah. Hi, that's me," Varion said, scrambling to sound chill. "Just Varion's fine, though. Titles are extra." "You are?" "Lysandra of the Verdant Grove," she replied, dipping her head slightly. "I've come to offer my aid. A blight from Creswick's dark magic is rotting your crops. I can heal the land, but I need shelter. My village was torched by their raiders." Varion's stomach did a flip. Awesome, another quest hook. This world's difficulty settings are stuck on nightmare. He shot a glance at Kalen, who just raised an eyebrow like, "Your call, man." "All right, let's scope it out," Varion said, nodding at Lysandra. "Lead the way, healer lady." They trekked to the fields, where the crops looked like they'd been hit by a glitch gray, drooping, basically screaming game over for the harvest. Lysandra dropped to her knees, pressing her hands into the dirt, and started murmuring some fancy elvish gibberish. A green glow pulsed from her fingers, spreading like a status effect cleanse, and the blight just melted away. Leaves perked up, color flooded back, and Varion's jaw dropped. "She's got freaking cheat codes, or admin rights. Can I get that DLC?" She stood, brushing off her robes, and Varion coughed to cover his awe. "That was insane. Thanks, Lysandra. You're staying. Hell, you're on the team now." He grinned, then his brain betrayed him. "Don't do it. Don't. Welcome to the squad. Not like a harem or anything. Oh, you absolute dumbass." Kalen choked on a laugh, slapping a hand over his mouth, while Lysandra's eyes widened. "A harem?" she repeated, a faint pink creeping up her cheeks that Varion's face went lava hot. "Ha! Nope. Kidding. Bad joke. Terrible joke. Ignore me. Charisma roll. Natural one. Where's the save point?" He waved his hands like he could erase the last 10 seconds. "Seriously, we're stoked to have you." She studied him for a beat, then nodded. "I'll need a place to rest and work. The magic drains me." Varion turned to Kalen, desperate to pivot. "Cottage. Near the mill. Good spot, yeah." Kalen smirked, still recovering from the harem fumble. "On it, boss. I'll grab timber and the crew." By midday, the clearing was a hive of action. Varion hacked at logs with an axe, sweat dripping into his eyes, muscle screaming like he'd overleveled his strength stat too fast. This is my shot to grind some reputation points, he thought, heaving a beam into place. Also, building a house for an elf? Total side quest flex. Lysandra hung back, her hands flickering with little spells to reinforce the wood. Because of course she's got utility magic too. And by afternoon, the cottage frame stood solid. She stepped up, touching the doorpost. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but heavy, her eyes catching his. "This means more than you realize." Varion shrugged, playing it off. "No biggie. You're saving our crops, so we're even." He hesitated, then added, "And, sorry about the harem thing earlier. Old habit from another life." She tilted her head, a tiny smile breaking through. "Another life? Long story," he said, scratching his neck. "Let's just say I'm still noobing my way through this world." Kalen strolled over, wiping his hands. "House is done, boss. Next move." Varion glanced at the sky. Sun dipping low, classic golden hour vibes. Food, then strategy. Cresswick's still out there, and I'm not waiting for the next plot twist. Later, Varion met Guster and Kalen in a clearing just beyond the village, where the air hung thick with the scent of pine and the distant murmur of the river. Guster, Alaric's grizzled retainer, stood like a weathered oak, his broad frame casting a long shadow in the fading light. Scars crisscrossed his arms, a map of battles fought and won, and his wooden sword dangled from his hand with a casual menace that belied its blunt edge. He was a wall of muscle and experience, his presence alone a challenge. "Ready, boy," Guster grunted, his voice a low rumble that seemed to shake the earth. Varion barely managed a nod before Guster lunged, his wooden sword slicing through the air with brutal precision. The clash was immediate and unforgiving. Varion's blade met Guster's with a sharp crack, the impact reverberating up his arms. He parried desperately, his boots scrambling for footing on the uneven ground, but Guster's strikes came fast and punishing, each one a hammer blow that drove him back. Sweat stung Varion's eyes as he struggled to keep up, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. A swift feint, and Guster's sword slipped past Varion's guard, slamming into his ribs with a force that knocked the air from his lungs. Varion crumpled, hitting the dirt hard, the world spinning as he wheezed. Guster loomed over him, the tip of his sword hovering at Varion's throat, his flint-hard eyes unyielding. "Cockiness kills," Guster growled, his voice a low thunder that brooked no argument. "You've got fire, boy, but fire alone don't win battles." He reached down, hauling Varion to his feet with a grip that was firm but not cruel, the calluses on his hand rough against Varion's skin. "Think, plan. That's how you survive." Varion nodded, panting, his chest heaving as he brushed dirt from his tunic. Pain throbbed in his ribs, but beneath it, a grudging respect took root, mingling with the sting of bruised pride. "I'll learn," he rasped, meeting Guster's gaze with a spark of determination. Guster's lips quirked into a smirk, barely there but real. "Good. You might make a fighter yet." Kalen clapped Varion on the shoulder as Guster lumbered off into the dusk, his laughter cutting through the clearings quiet like a burst of sunlight. "You're still breathing, so that's progress," the merchant teased, his eyes glinting with mischief. They sank onto a fallen log, its rough bark digging into their backs as they caught their breath. The cool evening air soothing their flushed skin. Varion winced, rubbing his side where Guster's blow had landed. "Progress? Feels like I got trampled by a runaway cart." Kalen chuckled, tossing a waterskin Varion's way. "You held your own, though. Guster doesn't go easy. Trust me, I've got the bruises to prove it." Varion caught the waterskin and took a long swig, the cool liquid easing his parched throat. "Yeah, well, held my own isn't enough. I need to be better, smarter." Kalen leaned back, his gaze drifting to the mill in the distance, its wool turning steadily against the darkening sky. "Speaking of smarter, those mills are raking in coin. Better than we hoped. What's the plan now?" Varion's eyes lit up, the ache in his ribs fading as his mind turned to purpose. "Supplies for the villagers. Coal, planks, whatever they need to patch up their homes." They've been through enough. Winter's coming, and I'm not letting anyone freeze. Kalen nodded, his expression softening into something warm and approving. That's a good call. They'll remember that, loyalty's earned, not bought. Varion grinned, nudging Kalen's shoulder. Look at you getting all wise. When did you turn into a philosopher? Kalen snorted, rolling his eyes. Since I started hanging around you, I guess. You're rubbing off on me. Their laughter mingled with the rustle of leaves, the easy banter settling into a deeper bond, friendship forged in shared goals, and the unspoken understanding that they were in this together. The mills hummed with success, their output stacking high, sacks of flour, piles of planks, and barrels of charcoal that gleamed like black gold in the morning light. Coin flowed into Falconia's coffers, a steady stream that Varion didn't let sit idle. He bought coal and planks in bulk, distributing them to the villagers with a lopsided grin that masked the weight of his responsibilities. Fix your houses, he told them, handing a bundle of timber to an old woman with gnarled hands and a weary smile. Winter's coming, and I'm not letting anyone freeze. We're in this together. The villagers murmured their thanks, their voices a mix of gratitude and surprise, their eyes reflecting a cautious hope. A young boy tugged at Varion's sleeve, his gap-toothed grin wide and earnest. Thanks, my lord. Ma says you're different. Varion ruffled the boy's hair, a quiet warmth spreading through him. Tell your ma I'm just getting started. As he walked away, the murmurs trailed after him. Grateful, yes, but edged with the wariness of people who'd been let down before. They'll come around, he thought, his steps firm with resolve. One step at a time. A summons came from Alaric later that day, the message curt and scrawled in a servant's hand. Varion found his father in the castle hall, the man's broad frame slumped in a high-backed chair, his gaze fixed on the cold, ash-strewn hearth. The air was thick with tension, the silence between them heavy as Varion approached, his boots scuffing softly against the stone floor. Alaric cleared his throat, his voice gruff and halting. You've done well, he said, his eyes avoiding Varion's, flickering instead to the shadows. The mills, the village. It's something. He coughed, a rough sound that betrayed the pride wrestling with shame beneath his words. Come back to the castle. Keep moving with your plans. Varion stood still, his heart tight with a fragile hope for more. An apology, a softening, but Alaric's jaw clenched, his pride a wall too high to breach. Still, the invitation lingered, a crack in the distance between them. Thanks, father, Varion said, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. He turned to leave, the echo of his footsteps swallowed by the cavernous hall. After Varion's footsteps faded, Alaric sat alone in the hall, the silence pressing down like a physical weight. His hands trembled as he stared at the wine bottles lining the table, their dark glass catching the dying light of the hearth's embers. Memories flickered unbidden. Varion's bruised face after a long-ago argument, the mill's steady hum, the village stirring to life under his son's care. His chest tightened, a raw ache he could no longer numb. Enough, he muttered, his voice hoarse and breaking. He grabbed a bottle, then another, hurling them into the hearth with a force that shattered the quiet. Glass exploded, red liquid pooling like blood across the stone, the sharp scent of wine cutting through the air. For him, he whispered, tears streaking his weathered face. For her, no more. He sank to his knees amid the wreckage, the shards glinting around him like a jagged promise. Sobriety loomed like a distant shore, treacherous and uncertain. But for the first time, he reached for it. His resolve flickered, fragile but real. A flame kindled in the dark. Chapter 4. Seeds of change. The morning sun rose over Falconia, its pale light filtering through the mist that hugged the riverbanks. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil and the faint tang of wood smoke. Varion stood at the edge of the mill's yard, watching a cart piled high with grain sacks roll toward the village. Beside him walked Tren, his personal guard, a wiry young man with a patchy beard, gripping his spear as if expecting an ambush at any moment. Easy, Tren, Varion said, clapping the guard's shoulder with a reassuring grin. It's grain, not a bandit raid. Tren forced a shaky smile. Aye, my lord, but after those tracks we saw last week, I'd rather not take chances. Varion nodded, his mind flickering to the threats looming beyond Falconia's borders. Blight, bandits, and the whispers of Creswick's dark influence. Today, though, his focus was closer to home. The villagers needed food, and he intended to deliver it in the village square. A small crowd had gathered, their faces etched with hunger and wariness. Varion climbed onto the cart, raising his hands. Morning, everyone. This grain's for you, fresh from the mill. No taxes, no catch. Take what you need. A ripple of surprise passed through the villagers. Mira, a sturdy woman with gray streaks in her braid, stepped forward, her keen eyes assessing the sacks. You're just giving it away, Lord? Pretty much, Varion replied, jumping down. Think of it as me betting on us all not starving. Myra's brow arched, but a hint of approval softened her gaze. All right, I'll see it's shared fare. As the villagers moved to unload the cart, Varion's attention shifted to Lysandra, standing near the well. Her silver hair glinted in the sunlight, but her emerald eyes were distant, her hands clasped tightly. She looked like someone carrying a weight too heavy to name. She's lost everything, Varion thought, a pang of empathy tightening his chest. Her village, her family, gone. I know that kind of drift. He approached her, his boots crunching softly in the dirt. Hey, Lysandra, you holding up okay? She blinked, her gaze sharpening as she focused on him. I manage, Lord Varion. The cottage you gave me helps, but the loss, it lingers. I get it, he said, leaning against the well's stone edge. Losing your whole world. It's rough, but you're not alone anymore. Falconia's your home now, and we're your people. You're part of this weird, messy family we're building. Her lips twitched, a fragile smile breaking through. Family? Yeah, he said, grinning. Maybe not perfect, but we've got your back. And if you ever need to talk, or, fling some badass elven spells, I'm around. She laughed, a quiet, melodic sound, and the tension in her shoulders eased. Thank you, Varion. That means more than you know. Later that day, a summons arrived from the castle. Feston, the butler, greeted Varion at the gate with his usual dry smile. Your father requests you, my lord. He's attempting to stay sober, it seems. Drinking water instead of wine. Varion's eyebrows shot up. That's new. Lead the way. In the great hall, Alaric sat at the long table, a cup of water trembling slightly in his grip. His eyes were clearer than Varion had seen in years, though exhaustion shadowed them. Feston lingered nearby, polishing a candlestick with deliberate care, clearly listening. Sit, Alaric rasped, nodding to a chair. Varion sat, hope and caution warring in his gut. I've been thinking, Alaric said, his voice gravelly. The mill, the village, you've done more than I thought you could. I misjudged you. Varion swallowed, keeping his tone even. Thanks, father, but we're not safe yet. We've got to take risks. Big ones if we're going to survive. Alaric's eyes narrowed. Risks? Varion leaned forward, his mind buzzing with ideas from his old life. A geeky obsession with history, fueled by documentaries and late-night reading. I've heard tales of faraway lands like Dubai and Monaco. People think Dubai got rich from oil, but it was trade, merchants, and companies flocking in because they scrapped taxes. We do that here. No taxes at all. Money comes from what people spend, not what we take. Merchants, workers, new industries. They'll pour in if Falconia's a haven. Feston's polishing slowed, his sharp gaze flickering with interest. Alaric frowned, swirling his water. No taxes? That's insane. Not really, Varion countered. We put a 5% tax on goods sold, that's our cut. Plus, we sell land rights to new businesses settling here. It's a slow build, but those places became legends for it. Alaric grunted, unconvinced. And Creswick? They'll come for us. That's why we reform the military, Varion said, his pulse quickening. I read about generals like Cao Cao and Friedrich Wilhelm from distant lands. They turned their people into soldiers. We start compulsory service. Every citizen trains in winter, when the fields are quiet. If war hits, we're ready. Festin spoke up, his voice smooth. Intriguing, my lord. But training them, how? In secret, Varion replied, glancing at the butler. We hire experts. Construction, smithing, retainers, but keep it under wraps. No one outside Falconia knows until we're strong. Alaric rubbed his chin, a faint smirk tugging at his mouth. You've got a head for this. There's more, Varion pressed. Infrastructure, stone roads like the ancients built, with drainage for rainwater. Small wooden towers every few kilometers along the border, with fire signals for trouble. Nearby bases to respond fast. It fights bandits and makes us safe. Safety draws trade. We crack down on crime. Too hard, fair, no tolerance. Festin tilted his head. And the knights? They'll need iron. Right? Varion said. We find or expert, locate iron, and use charcoal to build a new kind of forge. Workers specialize. One shapes the blade, another sharpens, another assembles. Faster, cheaper, better weapons. Alaric leaned back, his gaze distant. It's a hell of a gamble, boy. I know, Varion admitted, his voice steady. I'm young and this could flop. But if we don't try, we're finished anyway. So what do you think? Festin, you two? Ideas? The hall grew quiet. Festin cleared his throat. It's bold, my lord. Risky, but it could work. I'd suggest starting small. Test the sales tax in the village first. Alaric drained his cup and set it down hard. Do it. Make it real. Varion nodded, a spark of determination flaring inside him. This is it. Our shot. That afternoon, Varion found Kalen by the river, inspecting a charcoal shipment. Hey, Kalen, he called, jogging over. Got a sec? Kalen turned, flashing a sly grin. For you? Sure. What's brewing? No taxes, Varion said, leaning against a crate. Military reforms, new trade hub. I need you to spread the word. Merchants, traders, anyone with skills or coin. Falconia's open for profit, and you're my guy. Kalen's eyes gleamed. No taxes? They'll swarm us. What's in it for me? First dibs on trade deals, plus a cut for every new face you bring, Varion said, clapping his shoulder. You're not just a merchant. You're in on this with me. Done, Kalen said, grinning wider. I'll make it loud. Next, Varion tracked down Guster and Mira. Guster was at the forge, sharpening his sword with a scowl. Heard you're building a militia, he grunted. About time. Yeah, Varion said. Winter drills for everyone. Can you train them? Guster nodded curtly. I'll whip them into shape. Mira was at the grain stores tallying sacks. She glanced up as Varion approached. More schemes, Lord. Big ones, he said, smiling. Roads, towers, safety. I need you to organize the villagers. They listen to you. She crossed her arms. They'll pitch in if it's for them. Don't rush 'em. Deal, Varion said. We're all in this. The day ended with Varion on the castle ramparts, the wind pulling at his cloak as he stared out over Falconia. The mill hummed, the village buzzed, and possibility hung in the air. This is my chance, he thought. Time to make it happen. Chapter 5. Forging ahead, the sun crested the horizon, bathing Falconia in a warm, golden glow that shimmered across dew-kissed rooftops. In the village square, once a sleepy patch of packed dirt, life erupted with a vigor unseen in generations. Merchants rolled into the duchy from distant corners of the realm, their wagons groaning under the weight of treasures. Barrels of pungent spices, saffron and clove, that stung the air with their sharpness, bolts of silk dyed in hues of sapphire and crimson that caught the light like rippling water, and tools of polished steel that gleamed with a craftsman's pride. Voices overlapped in a chaotic symphony, hawkers bellowing their prices, coins jangling as they traded hands, and villagers haggling with wide-eyed excitement over goods they'd only dreamed of in leaner years. Varion stood at the square's edge, his dark cloak billowing gently in the morning breeze, his sharp hazel eyes taking it all in. The sight warmed him, a quiet pride swelling in his chest as he watched Old Man Torin, a farmer whose back had bent under decades of toil, barter for a sack of grain with a grin that split his weathered face. Money's flowing in at last, Varion thought, his mind already racing with plans. Time to turn this spark into a flame. He turned to Mira, a wiry woman with gray streaks threading her chestnut braid, her hands roughened by years of labor. She'd always had a keen eye, sharp enough to spot a miscounted bushel from across a field, and a mind that cut through nonsense like a well-honed blade. Varion handed her a leather-bound ledger, its cover embossed with simple runes, its pages crisp and blank, waiting to be filled. "You're in charge of the sales tax, Mira. 5% on every deal struck here. Keep the records tight, and I'll pay you a lord's wage for it." Myra's brows shot up, a flicker of disbelief crossing her lined face before she masked it with a wry smile. "A lord's wage, eh? You aiming to make me rich, Varion?" She tucked the ledger under her arm, her posture straightening as she cast a hawkish gaze over the bustling stalls. "I'll track every copper, down to the last bent one. You'll not find a single coin slipping through my fingers." Varion chuckled, clapping her on the shoulder with a firm hand. "I'd expect nothing less. We've got mouths to feed and dreams to build. I'm counting on you." She nodded, already muttering numbers under her breath, as she strode toward a merchant unloading a crate of apples, her quill poised like a weapon. Varion watched her go, a flicker of satisfaction settling in his gut. Step 1. Secure the coin. Now let's make it grow. The dwarf and the iron quest. By midday, a new figure trudged through Falconia's gates, his presence as solid and unyielding as the stone he claimed to master. Thrain Ironvein was a dwarf of stout build, his broad shoulders draped in a travel-worn cloak stained with the dust of a dozen roads. His beard, a thick cascade of auburn braids, hung past his chest, each braid clasped with iron rings that clinked faintly with every step, a testament to his craft. A pickaxe rested casually on his shoulder, its head nicked and scarred from years of breaking earth, and his piercing gray eyes scanned the village with a mix of curiosity and appraisal. Varion met him just inside the gate, the sun glinting off the dwarf's weathered gear. He extended a hand, his voice steady but eager. "Thrain? I'm Varion. I need iron, enough to arm us, enough to build with. Can you find it?" Thrain's handshake was a vice, his calloused palm rough as granite, and his voice rolled out like a landslide, deep and unhurried. "Aye, lad. I've sniffed out veins where lesser men saw only dirt. 20 silvers now, 20 when I strike, or that's my price." Varion didn't hesitate, digging into his pouch and pressing the coins into Thrain's hand. "Deal. Let's move." Over the next few days, Varion's absences from the village became a quiet pattern. He'd vanish at dawn with Thrain and a small crew, 2 sturdy lads with shovels and a creaky cart, heading into the hills that loomed beyond Falconia's borders. The terrain was unforgiving. Slopes of loose shale that shifted underfoot, winds that howled through narrow passes carrying the bite of frost, and craggy outcrops that jutted like the bones of some ancient beast. Thrain moved with purpose, tapping rocks with his pick, sniffing the air as if he could smell the metal beneath, while Varion followed, his cloak snagging on thorns, his boots caked with mud. Back in the village, the absences stirred whispers. One evening, as the firelight danced across the common room of the inn, Kalen leaned over his mug, his dagger scraping idly against a whetstone. "Where's he off to now?" he muttered, his lean frame slouched in a chair. Guster, sitting across from him, shrugged, his grizzled face etched with lines that told of battles past. "Lord's business," he said gruffly, sipping his ale. "Best not to poke at it." Lysandra, perched by the window with a book in her lap, glanced up, her silver hair catching the glow of the flames. "He's planning something," she said softly, her tone more curious than concerned. "Something big." No one argued, but the air thickened with unspoken questions, the mystery wrapping around them like a fog. The first road in Falconia, the pulse of progress beat louder each day. At the village's edge, a crew of laborers broke ground on the duchy's first stone road, a broad, sturdy path meant to tie Falconia to the trade routes snaking through the realm. The sun blazed overhead, turning the air heavy with dust and the sharp tang of sweat. Pickaxes rang out in a steady cadence. Clang, clang, thud, as workers drove them into the earth, splitting stone and hauling it aside with grunts of effort. Shirtless backs glistened, muscles straining as they laid a foundation of gravel, then fitted each slab of rock with care, their hands guided by a shared rhythm. Varion was among them, his fine cloak discarded in favor of a sweat-soaked tunic, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. He hefted a jagged stone, its weight biting into his palms, and dropped it into place, packing dirt around it with a shovel. "Slope the edges here," he called to a wiry worker named Jorin, gesturing with a dirt-streaked hand. "Keeps the water off when the rains hit. We don't want this washing away." Jorin paused, wiping his brow with a rag, his freckled face breaking into a grin. "Aye, Lord, you've a knack for this. Been reading them old scrolls, have you?" Varion laughed, the sound bright against the din of labor. "Something like that. Roman roads lasted centuries. Figure we can aim for half that." He clapped Jorin on the back, then bent to lift another stone, the ache in his shoulders a welcome reminder of the work taking shape. Around him, the crew traded jests, ribbing a young lad who'd tripped over his own shovel, or praising the cook who'd brought water and bread at noon. The road stretched forward, inch by hard-won inch, a lifeline etched into the earth. Manufacture smiths and water power down by the river, another marvel rose. Varion had envisioned manufacture smiths, forges powered not by weary arms but by the relentless churn of the watermills that hugged the riverbank. The construction was a dance of ingenuity. Carpenters hammered beams into place, their mallets thudding against wood, while masons laid stone foundations that gleamed wetly in the sun. The water wheel groaned as it turned, its paddles slicing through the current, driving a system of gears and rods that linked to massive trip hammers. When the first hammer fell, clang, the sound reverberated through the valley, a deep, resonant pulse that drowned out the river's murmur. Inside the smithy, the air shimmered with heat, thick with the acrid bite of molten metal and the sweat of labor. Workers bustled about, their faces smudged with soot, feeding iron into the forges where it glowed cherry red before the hammers pounded it into shape. Blades, plowshares, nails, each strike precise and unyielding. Villagers gathered at a safe distance, their eyes wide with awe at the sight. Water-bending steel, a feat they'd never imagined in their quiet corner of the world. Varion stood at the smithy's threshold, arms crossed over his chest, a satisfied grin tugging at his lips. Water power's the key. We're stepping out of the dark ages, one hammer at a time. He caught Thrain's eye across the forge, the dwarf inspecting a freshly shaped axehead with a critical squint. "Well," Varion called over the din, "what do you think?" Thrain straightened, his beard rings glinting in the firelight, and gave a grudging nod. "Clever, lad. Damned clever. You've got a head for more than swinging swords." His tone carried a rare warmth, and Varion took it as high praise, turning back to watch the hammers fall with a rhythm that felt like the heartbeat of Falconia itself. The Iron Mine days later, Thrain's expertise bore fruit. In a desolate stretch of the hills, where the wind carved eerie whistles through the rocks, he halted their small crew, Varion, 2 laborers with sweat-streaked faces, and a rickety cart piled with tools. He jabbed a thick finger at a jagged outcrop, its surface streaked with rust-red veins. "Here," he growled, his voice brooking no doubt. "Dig." Shovels bit into the earth, the sound a gritty scrape as dirt gave way. Minutes stretched into an hour, the laborers' breaths puffing white in the chill air, until a cry broke the silence. "Got it!" One of them, a broad-shouldered man named Gav, held up a chunk of rock, its surface glinting with the dull sheen of iron ore. The crew erupted shouts of triumph, fists pumping the air. As Thrain knelt to inspect it, running a gnarled hand over the find, Varion laughed, a bright, unguarded sound, and clapped the dwarf on the shoulder. "You're worth every silver and then some." Thrain smirked, stroking his beard as if it were a prized hound, while the laborers hooped, their exhaustion forgotten. Varion's mind raced. "Iron, our backbone. Step 1's done, now we forge it into strength." He ordered a rudimentary camp set up, tents staked into the rocky soil, picks and carts arranged for the next day's work. The mine was born, its first or a promise carved from the hills. The bandit camp Clash Falconia's peace was fragile, and it shattered one dusk when shadows moved too purposefully along the outskirts. Scouts had whispered of bandit sightings, ragged men with hollow eyes and rust-pitted blades, drawn by rumors of the village's growing wealth. When the attack came, it was swift and brutal. 30 figures spilling from the treeline, their shouts jagged with desperation, aiming to loot the granaries and merchant stalls. Varion was at the square when the first cry rang out, his sword already in hand as he rallied his crew. Guster fell in beside him, his weathered frame taut with readiness, while Kaelin darted forward, dagger gleaming. Lysandra took the rear, her silver hair whipping in the wind as she murmured incantations. A handful of villagers, armed with pitchforks, axes, anything they could grab, joined them, their faces pale but resolute. The clash was chaos. Varion met a burly bandit head-on, the man's axe swinging wild. Steel clanged against steel, the impact jarring up Varion's arm as he parried, then lunged, his blade slicing the bandit's forearm. The man howled, dropping his weapon, and Varion shoved him into the dirt. Guster fought nearby, his sword a brutal arc, felling a wiry foe with a thrust to the chest. "Guard up, boy!" he barked at Varion. His voice cutting through the din. Kaelin wove through the fray like a shadow, his dagger flashing as it found a bandit's thigh, then another's ribs. Behind them, Lysandra's magic flared. Vines erupted from the ground, snaring legs and tripping attackers. Her hands steady despite the sweat beading her brow. The villagers held their own, fury outweighing their fear. A farmer drove his pitchfork into a bandit's side, roaring as he pushed him back, while a young woman swung an axe with clumsy but effective force. Varion ducked a sword swing, his heart pounding, adrenaline flooding his veins. Protect them. Hold the line. He slashed again, disarming another foe, and Guster finished the man with a grunt of approval. "Better?" he said, blood streaking his blade. The bandits broke, their numbers thinning, and the survivors fled into the darkening woods, their curses fading with their footsteps. Varion lowered his sword, chest heaving, his tunic damp with sweat and speckled with dirt. "We held," he panted, meeting Guster's eye. "But we've got to be sharper." Guster nodded, wiping his blade on a fallen bandit's cloak. "Aye, they'll be back, or worse will come. Train harder, lad." Training and redemption. The attack lit a fire under Varion. The next morning, he was in the castle courtyard at dawn, wooden sword in hand, facing Tren and Guster. The air was crisp, dew still clinging to the grass, as their blades clacked in a staccato rhythm. Tren, wiry and quick, danced around him, landing a tap on Varion's shoulder that made him grimace. "Too slow," Tren teased, grinning. Varion swung back, catching Tren's arm, and laughed despite the sting of sweat in his eyes. Guster circled them, his gray eyes flinty, barking corrections. "Move your feet faster, Varion. Think 2 steps ahead, not 1. He stepped in, disarming Varion with a flick of his wrist, then handed the sword back with a gruff. Again, the hours stretched, muscles burning, but Varion pushed on, each small victory. A parry landed, a feint dodged. Building his confidence from a shadowed archway, Alaric watched, his broad frame still as stone. His son's determination stirred something deep, memories of his own youth, of battles fought with a blade that once sang in his hands, of a wife whose fire Varion had inherited. His fists clenched, scarred knuckles whitening, a flicker of honor rekindling in his chest. That night, in the dim light of his chambers, he pulled his old sword from its dusty scabbard. The weight was familiar, a quiet challenge. He swung it once, twice, his movements stiff but deliberate, a knight stepping back toward redemption in secret. A moment with Lysandra one evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Varion found Lysandra by the river. The water gleamed silver under a waxing moon, its surface rippling with the night's breath, and the air carried the soft chorus of crickets and the rustle of leaves. She sat on a smooth stone, her silver hair unbound and glowing like a halo, her fingers trailing lazily in the current. Her expression was distant, lost in thought, and Varion hesitated before stepping closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Hey," he said softly, pausing a few feet away. "You all right?" She looked up, her violet eyes catching the moonlight, and a faint smile curved her lips. "I am now. Just thinking." She gestured to the water. "It's peaceful here, a rarity these days." "Yeah," Varion agreed, settling beside her on the stone, close enough to feel the warmth of her presence, but leaving space for the quiet between them. "Falconia's changing. It's becoming something real, something worth fighting for." Lysandra nodded, her gaze drifting back to the river. "It is, and you're making it happen. I've seen villages crumble under less pressure than this, but you hold it together." He shrugged, a little sheepish. "Not alone. You, Guster, Kalen, everyone's pulling their weight." He paused, then added, "If you ever need anything, someone to talk to, or just sit with, I'm here." Her eyes met his warm and steady, a depth in them that made his chest tighten. "Thank you, Varion. Truly." She reached out, resting a hand lightly on his arm for a moment before letting it fall, the gesture simple but heavy with trust. They sat in silence after that, the river's song weaving around them, a fragile thread of connection tying them to the night and to each other.